Wisdom, let us stand and listen to the Holy Gospel. Peace be with you all.
And with your spirit.
The reading of the Holy Gospel according to St. John.
Glory to you, O Lord.
At that time, when Jesus was passing, he saw a man blind from his birth, and his disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, it was not that this man sinned, or his parents, but that the works of God might be made manifest in him. I must work the works of him who sent me, while it is day. Night comes when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. As he said this, he spat on the ground and made clay of the spittle, and anointed the man's eyes with the clay, saying to him, Go, wash in the pool of Siloam, which means sent. So he went and washed and came back seeing. The neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar said, Is not this man he who used to sit and beg? Some said, It is he. Others said, No, but it is like him. He said, I am the man. They said to him, Then how were your eyes opened? He answered, The man called Jesus made clay and anointed my eyes and said to me, Go to Siloam and wash. So I went and washed and received my sight. They said to him, Where is he? He said, I do not know. They brought to the Pharisees the man who had formerly been blind. Now it was the Sabbath day when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. The Pharisees asked again him how he had received his sight. And he said to them, He put clay on my eyes, and I washed and I see. Some of the Pharisees said, This man is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath. But others said, How can a man who is a sinner do such signs? There was a division among them. So they said to the blind man, What do you say about him, since he has opened your eyes? He said, He is a prophet. The Jews did not believe that he had been blind and received his sight until they called his parents of the man who had received his sight and asked them, Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How then does he now see? His parents answered, We know that this is our son, and that he was born blind, but how he now sees we do not know, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him. He is of age. He will speak for himself. His parents said this because they feared the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that if anyone should confess to him to be Christ, he was to be put out of the synagogue. Therefore his parents said, He is of age. Ask him. For the second time they called the man who had been blind and said to him, Give God the praise. We know that this man is a sinner. He answered, Whether he is a sinner, I do not know. One thing I know, though I was blind, now I see. They said to him, What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes? He answered them, I have already told you, and you would not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you too want to become his disciples? And they reviled him, saying, You are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but for this man, we do not know where he comes from. The man answered, Why, this is a marvel. You do not know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but if anyone is a worshiper of God and does his will, God listens to him. Never since the world began, it has been heard that anyone has opened the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing. They answered him, You were born in utter sin, and you would teach us. And they cast him out. Jesus heard that they had cast him out, and having found him, he said, Do you believe in the Son of God? He answered, And who is he, sir, that I may believe in him? Jesus said to him, You have seen him, and it is he who speaks to you. He said, Lord, I I believe, and he worshipped him. Please be seated. Christ is risen. Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory be forever.
Good morning and Kalimata. Yesterday I had a very intense conversation with a friend of mine for about 2 hours until my wife actually came to me and said, "That's it, get off the phone." She knows my tone of my voice. We weren't arguing, but we were having a very intense conversation. And he had made this statement numerous times, but yesterday I just felt like I was compelled, especially with this weekend being the Sunday that we celebrate the man who was born blind. He had told me, he said, there's so many people out there that don't become Christians because of the things that people do. We don't shine brightly enough. We don't shine. We don't let our lights shine. And I said, yeah, but it's not your responsibility for everybody else's lights to shine. It's your responsibility for your own light to shine. If this person that you're talking about, or the people that you're talking about, have not seen a good witness of Jesus Christ, that includes you as well. That includes what you have done. Because every single person that you encounter in this life, sometimes you only have one chance to be that light in their life. As I'm thinking about this now, I'm thinking, and I have done a couple sermons on the light of the world. The man who was born blind today was speaking of being born blind at birth. But aren't we all? Aren't we all born completely blind at birth? We're born blind to any kind of sin. We're born blind to lying and stealing. We're born blind to being disobedient to our parents. We're born blind of idolatry. We're born blind of every single sin that you can completely think of. When you're born, you're like a blank slate. Nothing written on it. A chance. And oftentimes, and I have reflected this in my own life, oftentimes, I know sometimes even my own son argues with me. And I think to myself, is he arguing with me because the voice of the world has been so much louder than the voice of Jesus Christ? Have I done my job? Have I taught him? Have I been the light of the world to him so he can carry that light to the next person? I mean, granted, you can't go back 20 years. You can't change the things you've done in the past. And no matter how dim some of the lights are, I told my friend, I said, you have sat here and told me that I've seen people in church being adulterers and being sinners and all these things. He says, they're just not good examples of Jesus Christ. I said, yes, but think about this. Think about this. The grace that God gives us, the grace that Jesus gives us, I would much rather approach the throne of God believing and accepting Jesus Christ as the biggest sinner in the world than approaching Jesus Christ as the best person in the world, having never accepted him as my Lord and Savior. Which one will actually receive the grace? So we had this intense conversation. When Jesus approaches this man, he approaches a man that has been born blind since the beginning of his birth. And yes, as this guy is sitting there thinking, what does he hear? He hears this guy put spit in his mouth and spit on the ground and make mud with the dirt of the ground. Can you imagine the creator of the universe again molding something out of clay, putting it on his eyes? And when he is able to see, he is then brought forth to a bunch of people that are completely blind to the truth. Everybody that he stood in front of was blind. But when he opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was the light of the world. That was the first thing he saw. And he became a witness to the light of the world, knowing that his name was Jesus, but not knowing yet. And I guarantee inside of him it was stirring, but not knowing yet who it was exactly that Jesus was. And he was a witness even in front of the powers that be. And these people are trying to condemn him, and they revile him. So I beg to ask the question, I ask myself, who exactly in this part of history, in the scriptures, was blind? It was the blind that led the blind, Jesus says, right? It was the blind people that were questioning the person that had formerly been blind. Because there is many different types of blindness. We as parents, we have one opportunity oftentimes. And yes, sometimes you can be the best parent in the world. You can be the best parent. You can be teaching your children about Jesus Christ. You can be taken to the church, and still, somehow, the voice of the world is still louder. It happens. But then, you can be the worst abusive parent in the world, but the voice of the Lord screams louder than the voice of the abuse that they're being. There's really sometimes no rhyme or reason behind exactly what happened. But God is in control. And the only person that we are responsible for ultimately is ourselves. If I am up here week after week, service after service, for the last year and a half, giving sermons, sitting with you, teaching people, giving help, listening to confessions, and you still don't see clearly enough, then as long as I'm doing the job that I'm supposed to be doing, then ultimately I will stand before God as an uncondemned man. But if I had become ordained, and I was allowing my light to flicker, and I was doing all the things that are contrary to what we believe, and we have seen it many, many times in priests for the last few years, but why do you think that's happening? Pedophilia, abuse of power, making idiots of yourselves. You name it, I guarantee a priest has done it. Bishop, it doesn't matter who it is. But it's up to us to be the lights of the world. Sometimes we need to shine brighter than even the priest does. It is up to us. And then I call to mind the epistle reading today, and from the Acts. Paul and Silas were sitting in the jail, right? Paul and Silas were sitting in the jail, and while they were sitting in the jail, they were singing hymns to the Lord. Just because they were in jail, it did not stop them from praising God. He praised them and praised them and praised them. And that night the angel of the Lord came, an earthquake happened, the doors were open, and here was their chance, a jailbreak. They could have left. They could have left. But when the guard heard it, he says, "Bring me my sword, I'm going to kill myself because everybody's escaped." And Paul says, "No, no, no. We're still here. We're still here." Paul, in essence, was saying what? The light of the world, the light that I'm shining, the person that I believe in, is still shining through me, and we stayed. We did not leave. And what did the guard say? "Bring me some light so that I can go in and see." He asked for the light. And as he walked in and he saw them, he says, "I want what you have. I want it. Tell me what I must do to be saved. Tell me what I must do." And as I was talking to my friend yesterday, there was some people that he had worked with that had really been horrible to him. Really horrible. Talked bad to him. Was trying to make advances on him. Different types of people were trying to do things to him. And he says, I can't stand these people. I don't even talk to them. I said, but why? I said, you have an opportunity to be a light to that person. You may be the only chance that that person has at finding salvation. Why? Even if you don't say anything, just showing kindness is something that's all that's needed sometimes. I said, he says, well, this guy nobody can stand him, and if people see him and like me, they might drag him off and beat him and almost kill him. I said, would you allow it? If you saw this person getting drug off to be beat, would you allow it? Well, what? Is it our job to condemn and criticize the person? Us going in and intervening even for our enemies, right? What did Jesus say? Love our enemies and pray for those who despitefully use us. Love our enemies. If I see somebody that's my enemy being drug off to be put to death, and I have an opportunity to go in there and save his life, even if it costs me mine, I stand before the throne of God with a better chance than the person that would have just died, that never accepted Jesus. I said, the light of the world is something that we must shine brightly. What does Jesus tell us? And I know I've mentioned this numerous times during sermons and during my conversations. What does Jesus say? A city on a hill cannot be hidden. And a light that's on a stand should not be put underneath a bushel. It's designed to cast light for the world. It's designed to shine so everybody can see. And a city that's on a hill, it's there so that way weary travelers that are traveling can see clearly enough to get there. How many of us have been on a journey? How many of us have driven from state to state after 10, 11, 12 hours of driving, and the most exciting thing you can see is the gas station waiting for us at that city. The lights. I've never been so happy to see a mobile station sometimes. Because the light is showing me that there's some sort of place where I will be able to rest. That's what the light of the world is. We need to be examples to our families. If we're teaching our children that it's okay, go ahead and sleep in on Sunday, and instead of waking them up and arguing with them and fighting with them and dragging them out of bed, that's okay, whose voice is screaming louder? If we're showing the people that we're friends with that it's okay for us to be outside smoking cigarettes and telling dirty jokes instead of being the light of the world, then what example are we showing? See, it's easy for us to criticize people outside of our relationship with God. But oftentimes, we don't look at our own reflection in the mirror. And that goes even to our spouses, our children, our families. What did Jesus say again? People of your own household will one day become enemies and be putting you to death for my sake. For my sake. If you're ever in a situation where you're praising God and you have a chance to escape, but there's one little chance for you to change somebody's life, stay, even if it means costing you yours. I had heard an interesting little semi-parable that talked about a pastor going out into the boat with his son and his friend. He had been teaching his son all of his life about Jesus. The son was a good boy. The son was an innocent boy. The son loved God and attended church. And the other boy, the friend, he noticed and watched, but he never accepted Jesus. He wanted to sometimes, but he never took that leap of faith. Well, one day while they were out on the sea, the water, a storm came. All of a sudden, knocked all of them out into the water. Right? The father, he climbs back up. He's trying to get his children. And he says, I have one safety raft here. I have one ring that I can throw out. And I can only save one of the children. So as he's standing on the edge of the boat and he's watching at his children, he throws the ring out to the boy that had never accepted Jesus Christ, allowing his own child to drown. Later on, as he was sitting as an old man and he was watching this pastor talk, the young boy comes up and says, this one time when I went fishing with my friend and his dad, we went overboard, and that person saved my life and let his own son die, just so I could have my life. That light of the world shined so brightly that he himself became a pastor. He himself became a leader of men because the Father was willing to sacrifice his own child for the salvation of the person that didn't know who Jesus was. So the Lord allows us this opportunity. And those of us that are here, those of us that are hearing the gospel and hearing the epistle and hearing the words that are coming out of the mouth of the priest, because trust me when I tell you, almost every single time that I give a sermon, it's for me as well. I never give a sermon that is not reflected back to me as well. It is for me, and the message is for me. For us to go out and to be lights of the world, even when it's in members of our own family. Even if it's a person that's, there's no way he's going to listen. There's no way they're going to change. Be that light. Be that light if you're going to be in their light. So may the Lord bless us and protect us and give us the courage we need to shine and to be the lights of the world that we need to be. Now let us glorify him and praise him always. Christ is risen.
Indeed, he is truly